Second. Yeah. Share my screen. Hope let me know when you can see my screen. Is it visible?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
visible.
Okay. So yesterday we have seen this posting different sales tax. I mean, posting the sales tax on various transactions like customer invoices, vendor purchase order. Okay, and we have also settled sales tax in for a particular period, like for November period. The sales tax payables and sales tax receivables have been combined, and the net amount is being extracted, for which an invoice is created for the vendor that we link it to that sales tax authority. Right? So it was clear until there. Today, let us see some of the leftover topics in this module of tax. So we'll discuss about this particular tax called as withholding tax. Most of them will skip without teaching this one, withholding taxes. This is also important because many of the clients now use withholding taxes. So either in India or in Middle East or in um, Europe, we have this prominence of withholding tax. Coming to US and Canada, I think we don't normally have withholding taxes. Okay, any idea what is a withholding tax? Anyone?
We deduct the tax and we pay the remaining amount.
Correct.
Like
Usually in
salary.
correct. Usually in the sales tax, what we will do? Suppose we create a invoice for a vendor. Let's assume. Okay. Suppose we create an invoice for a vendor. Here you can see vendor account is created for 1,000 here. So this is use tax payable, right? I'll just go for the other one. This should be yeah. Here we go. This is an entry of the invoice with a tax. So inventory account is debited for 1,000. Tax receivable is debited for 100. And vendor or accounts payable account is created for 1,100. Which means that while you are paying the vendor, you have to pay total amount of 1,100. Means including sales tax you have to pay to the vendor. You also have to pay the inventory amount as well as the tax calculated amount. Total amount you have to pay to the vendor while you are paying to the vendor, or you are liable to pay to the vendor the whole amount. Whereas it comes to withholding tax, you don't pay withholding tax to the vendor. You will just retain the tax with yourself and you will pay it to the authority. Okay, you will normally submit it to the authority. So mostly withholding taxes will be on some kind of services. Not on goods you will see withholding tax often, but on services you see it often. Service related. So in India we have this one, right? TDS or the income tax. So in India we have income tax, right? So normally when company is paying any payroll expenses to the employees, how company will pay? So payroll expense will be debited. Okay, payroll expense account will be debited. So it is debited for suppose let's say 1 lakh. And your cash account will be created. Let's assume cash account is credited for 1 lakh. Okay, there are income taxes which are apart from the salary that you are paying to the employees. So what are those income taxes? How will you record an entry for those income taxes, or how do you even calculate such income taxes? Or that withholding taxes. See, your company is not paying taxes to you, right? His company is paying taxes to the authority. Company is retaining or holding the tax amount that has to be paid to the employee, and company will pay it or submit it to the tax authority later. That's the whole agenda of withholding taxes. In the same way, for a lot of services also, companies will withhold the tax on the vendor side, which has to be paid to the vendor, and later they will pay it to the authority. So they will submit the tax to the authority, the withholding taxes. That's what is called as withholding tax, and it's slightly different from sales tax. Under sales tax, normally you pay the tax and you receive the tax. You pay the tax to the vendors on the purchase orders and other invoices. You receive the tax from the customers on sales orders and sales orders invoices or free text invoices. But here in this case, normally if withholding tax is not applicable in the customer scenarios at all, it's only applicable on the purchases and the vendor scenarios. And you will not pay the tax to the vendor and you will retain the tax. So the tax calculation and the accounting process is slightly different compared to the sales tax. Let's see how we can configure the withholding tax setups. It's a small setup only, just like sales tax, we have withholding tax setups, and how we can apply the withholding taxes on a vendor invoice and how it will be calculated and accounting entries are posted. We'll see now in today's class. So I'll take you to tax module. I'm in MRF legal entity. In tax module, just like in indirect taxes, we have sales taxes earlier, right, where we have configured all these things. The same way I have withholding taxes. So in withholding taxes, I only have withholding tax groups and withholding tax codes. Here I can see withholding tax groups and withholding tax codes. But before that, we can also do this setup of tax authorities. So normally I don't think so here we have tax authorities, but in the new setups we have tax authorities. For withholding tax, again in the new setups, I'll tell you after some time how the new setups look like. So I'll just go here to this withholding tax code. Let's see. Guess so we should start it with ledger posting group. So okay, so let me go with withholding tax code. Within this, what it would ask, let's see. So in the withholding tax code, I'm just creating a code. Click on new, select the withholding tax. So I'll say withholding tax 10%. Here give the same withholding tax 10% US currency, yes. Then the main account to be selected for the calculation of tax, withholding tax. So you can create a main account quickly. So you will retain that tax, right? So it will be like withholding tax payable to the authority. Whatever you retain, it will be withholding tax payable. So it will be a liability account for you since you have to pay it to the authority. So we'll just give it another number like 2,60,000. Withholding tax payable. Okay. And I'll just give it as a liability account. Then the posting type, I'll give it as withholding tax. I just clicked on W and automatically this withholding tax will appear. Out of this list here, I can see this. So withholding tax I have selected for the account that I have created, 2,60,000. So I'll just go back and assign this here, 2,60,000. Then percentage of net amount or percentage of gross amount. Obviously, this percentage of net amount is the major selection by any of the client. And round offs you can give same like in the earlier sales tax codes. You can give a round off like up to 1 cent or like that. Rounding upwards or downwards or normal rounding. You can give anything. Okay, that's one. So I'll just save this. So you said it is 10% here, but you did not give 10% anywhere. You just gave in the name. So you have to give a value, right? So for that you have this option here as values, just like in the sales tax codes. However, how we have, so in the same way we have from date to date, maximum limit and minimum limit and maximum limit, and the value option here. So I can give it as 10% here. This. Then I also have this option of limits. I can give this minimum amount of withholding tax to be calculated, maximum amount of withholding tax to be calculated, as well as dates I can give. And I have that option again in this withholding tax code also. Just like in the sales tax code, I have the options. Under inquiries, I will have the same, include in withholding tax groups. So you can see the groups in which this code is included and posted withholding tax using this particular code. We don't have any tax posted yet with using this code, so we can't see anything in that too. So this is how I can create a withholding tax code. And then I can create the next setup, withholding tax group. It's nothing very big here. So it's just a withholding tax group where you will create a group like double H 10%, just a group name also I give the same. And here you have to link that code, withholding tax code. So that's all, 10% completed. So these are the two setups we have in the simple withholding tax. newly in the new version of Dynamics for withholding taxes, we have got a lot of features. So what features are just like in the sales tax, how we have this sales tax authority, sales tax settlement periods, posting groups, everything we have, right? In the same way, for withholding tax also we have got new features like withholding tax authority, withholding tax settlement periods, withholding tax posting groups, withholding tax codes, this one withholding tax groups and withholding tax with item withholding tax groups. We got all of them. So just like how we configured sales tax, in the same way we'll configure withholding tax also. Okay, but in the groups place, you don't have that withholding tax payable and receivable and all. Normally in the group place, you have withholding tax account and withholding tax offset account actually. So in the very new version of Dynamics, not many of them got adapted to it yet, but it is the latest update in withholding taxes. You can follow the documentation of Microsoft. There was a documentation actually. I'll share you if I will find it. So, but here in this version, it's simple withholding tax. You just have to create that code and group. That's all. Withholding tax code and withholding tax group. That's all. There is nothing at all to be added here. So, is it clear until here? These two steps for all of you. Configuration. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. If this is clear, let's see how we can apply withholding taxes on certain invoices. First of all, I'll give this withholding tax code to a existing vendor. I'll go to all vendors. So withholding tax, normally sales taxes are calculated during the invoice time. So whenever you post invoice, sales tax will be accounted. But withholding taxes are not like that. Withholding taxes are accounted when you make a payment. So during payment, withholding tax entry will appear, not at the time of invoice. Okay. So keep that point. So I'll go to Tata Motors, a vendor here. In that, I'll go to edit this. I'll go to invoice and demographics, invoice and delivery. Here I have this option. Calculate withholding tax group. So this is the area where we can give sales tax group also. But for this vendor, I'm not giving any default sales tax group, but I'm just giving the withholding tax. See, I just gave calculate withholding tax enabled. And the withholding tax group, we have only one group, right? Created 10% group. So I'll just give that group. Withholding tax 10%. Click on save. Perfect. I just gave it to the vendor. Now I'll create a invoice journal for the vendor. So for that, I'll just go to invoice here. Click on invoice, create invoice journal. So it will automatically create an invoice journal or take me to the invoice journal page. So just select the vendor invoice journal, go to lines. Here, I can select the vendor account and the vendor for which I have given the default withholding tax group. So I'll select that vendor, Tata Motors. Just give the invoice date as today's date, invoice number as, just give Tata invoice 24 something. So vendor will be credited, right? So I'll just credit the vendor for $1,000 or $10,000. Let's assume credited the vendor for $10,000 and offset account is selected. I'll select the offset account as some expense account, something like insurance expenses. Okay. So Tata Motors is selected and 10,000 is credited for Tata Motors. Then for debiting purpose, I have selected a offset account, which is this insurance expenses account. Now if I click on save, I'll see the voucher values will be filled up here. I see this as 131.23. I think it's in INR. For this vendor, I think the currency is INR. I'll just change it to US dollar. Perfect. So again, I'll save it. So now I see 10,000, 10,000. All right. Now if I see on sales tax here, I don't have any sales tax because we did not apply sales tax. Sales tax group and item sales tax group are empty. But we have withholding tax on this. So how withholding tax is calculated? Withholding tax will not calculate during the invoice time. It will only get calculated at the payment time. When you are settling the invoice, then only withholding tax will be calculated. So I'll show you that. Before to that, you can check the withholding tax here actually. So it would be somewhere. You can add that field of withholding tax. Normally, if you have given it as default to the vendor, it will automatically appear. But since here, I'll just add that field. So to add that field, you can right click on this page. You can go to personalize, add a field. I think I have it here. Sorry. Let me see. Anyway, we have clicked it right. I have this withholding tax group in this corner. I added it earlier. Other than withholding tax, I'll see with fields which are contains with only one. So I have it already. So I'll select this withholding tax group. No need of selecting it again in the invoice. Normally, if you select it on the vendor, automatically it will be selected. So by default, it will be selected. But on invoice, it is not considerable at all. So on payment, it normally considers the default withholding tax group that is existing on the vendor. Only during the payment of invoice it will consider. Okay, now if I save it and if I post it, this entry, see this invoice is posted. If I go and check the voucher for this posted invoice, I can see here accounts payable is credited for 10,000, insurance expenses debited for 10,000, and you don't have any withholding tax calculated or neither any taxes calculated because sales tax we already ignored it. We did not assign any sales tax group or item sales tax group. Withholding tax will not be calculated during the invoice, but during the payment of the invoice, it will be calculated. We'll see that next step, how withholding tax will be calculated during the payment of the invoice. So for that, I'll take you to accounts payable, payment journal here. I'll create a new journal, select it as vendor payment journal, go to lines. So select that account, vendor account, Tata Motors, select it. Okay, here I'll change it to US dollar only for the time being. So here I have the option of settle transactions. I'll go to settle transactions to mark that invoice for settlement. Let's see this one. I'm paying this invoice, which is for 10,000 US dollars. Tata invoice 24, which I have created now. So I marked it. As soon as I mark the invoice, I see a message here. Invoice currency US dollar, settled amount to invoice is 10,000. Withholding tax code 10%. Withholding tax in invoice currency 1,000. So you can see clearly it is calculating withholding tax on the during the payment. If you are selecting the invoice for settlement, automatically it is selecting this withholding tax of 10,000. 1000. 10% is calculated. The following withholding tax has been calculated for the vendor number 3. That's what it is saying. You have this option of withholding tax here. When you select an invoice for settlement, you see this option of withholding tax here. If you click on it, you can see the clear calculation of withholding tax. See, for this invoice voucher, this date, invoice amount 10,000, withholding tax code applied is withholding tax 10%. So you can select anything if you want to. In that particular withholding tax group, if you have added 2-3 codes, you can select one code. It only takes one code for calculation. Okay. Then basis amount 10,000, calculated withholding tax, as you can see, withholding tax in invoice currency 1000, withholding tax in default currency 1000. So 1000 withholding tax is calculated. Clear, guys? This one, all of you. Withholding tax. Withholding means the term itself indicates that withhold means keep it with ourselves. So the 1000 amount we are keeping with ourselves, and we will pay the vendor only 9,000 on this. Out of the 10,000 that we have to pay, 9,000 rupees will keep withhold with ourselves, and 9,000 will pay to the vendor. 1,000 we will pay to the tax authority later. So that will be recorded as a liability. I'll show you how it will be recorded. So I'll just show you the entry once again. Just get down. So when we have done the invoice, this was the entry. Invoice entry. Accounts payable is credited for 10,000, sorry, and expense account, right? Insurance expense. So let me call it just expense account. Expense account is debited for 10,000. All right. Let's make the payment. Suppose we have selected, right, this invoice already for settlement. I'm going to overview. We have selected this invoice already for settlement. I'll click on OK here. Withholding tax was calculated. See, as soon as I click on OK, I see only 9,000 for payment. Only 9,000. 1,000 rupees here, 1,000 US dollars you are withholding with yourself or with the business. So I'll select an offset account for payment of this. I'll select a cash account quickly rather than bank account to make it simple. Now I can post it. I'll just validate this before posting it. It's fine. Now I'll post it. Posted. Now let us see the voucher here. Here is the voucher. So I can see voucher as accounts payable 9,000, cash 9,000. Accounts payable 9,000, cash 9,000. So I'll just note down payment voucher. Okay. You have paid only 9,000 to the vendor. Accounts payable is debited for 9,000 and cash is credited for 9,000. So what about that 1,000? That 1,000 is the withholding tax. So how I can see where it is posted? Here you can see all related vouchers. In all related vouchers, you can see that withholding tax voucher. If you click on all related vouchers, you'll also see that voucher here automatically. See here. This is the accounts payable and cash account voucher, earlier one. This is the withholding tax voucher. Withholding tax payable is credited for 1,000. Accounts payable is reversed or debited for 1,000. So one liability, normally accounts payable is a liability. That liability is transferred to another liability as withholding tax payable, which you will pay to the authority. Here you have to pay it to the vendor, right? So that was cancelled and transferred to another liability. So I'll just write down this entry here. Withholding tax voucher. Withholding tax payable is credited for 1,000. It is a liability account, and accounts payable is debited for 1,000. So it is a liability account as well. Now I'll show you how this will be cancelled, or how these entries will be cancelled or knocked off to each other. Suppose if you see this voucher, invoice voucher, accounts payable is credited for 10,000. So I'll just make it as a color. Accounts payable is 10,000. Here I can see accounts payable again, which is debiting for 1,000. And here I can see withholding tax. Sorry, not this one. Again, accounts payable account here debiting for 1,000. So totally accounts payable account was credited for 10,000 when I have done the invoice, posted the invoice, and during payment 9,000 was debited, and when the withholding tax was calculated and posted, another 1,000 was debited. So it will entirely become zero. Accounts payable account or the vendor account will finally become zero. Then what will remain is expense will remain for 10,000. Okay. Cash account will be credited for 9,000. You are paying cash of 9,000 now to the vendor. Withholding tax payable will be created for 1,000. Means it's a liability. Again, you have to pay it later. When you pay this, again cash account will be created for another 1,000. So final entry will be expense account debit and cash account credit for 10,000, 10,000 when you settle the withholding tax. So this withholding tax you will settle at the end of a period, maybe at the end of month or year and something. You will pay it totally to the authority. So withholding tax authority like income tax authority or any other authority if they're in any country specific, so we'll pay it accordingly. So that's how the withholding tax is retained with the business while you are making payments, and later when you are later at the end of the period you will pay it to the authority directly. Clear guys, the accounting impacts and the implication, configuration and the process, all of you?
Yes, Jay.
Okay. Sushila, Saideep, clear?
Okay.
Okay. So you can also calculate both withholding tax and sales tax on an invoice. That is also possible. Okay, there are chances that you will have both withholding taxes and sales taxes on invoice. So normally I'll just show you an example for that invoice as well. Click on IF, go to vendor invoice journal, go to lines. See, I'll select the same vendor, Tata Motors, for which I have given the withholding tax code. So I'll select today's date itself and select another invoice, Tata INV 28. Okay. Credit the vendor for 10,000 again for 10,000. So I'll just change it to US dollar again, not INR. Offset account, I'll select some account as again something like insurance expense account only. Let's assume it's not insurance payable, sorry. Insurance expenses account. Perfect. So you can also give sales tax group and item sales tax group also here, so that when you post the invoice, sales tax will also get calculated. Let's see how it will be. So I'll select the sales tax group as this 5%, IGST 5%, and item sales tax group as all. So now it will be 5% tax calculated on this invoice upon the 10,000 amount. Did I give 1 lakh in the amount? So I'll just change it to 10,000. Okay. On the 10,000 invoice, 500 tax is calculated. As you can see, calculated sales tax is 500, which means the total invoice amount now is 10,000 plus 500, 10,500. So you can see the sales tax here. IGST 5% on 10,000 is calculated. Okay, there is no withholding tax here in the invoice time. At the time of invoice, you don't have that withholding tax option at all, or you don't have the withholding tax calculation at all. Now I will post this. So it is posted invoice. Now I can see the voucher here. So there will be additionally sales tax entry, sales tax receivable. So tax receivable 500, insurance expenses debited for 10,000, total of which is credited to accounts payable account for 10,500. So this is the invoice. So this invoice clear for all of you? This entry?
Yeah, clear.
Okay, if this is clear, Then I'll go to payment transaction to settle that particular invoice that we have posted. Just create a new payment, vendor payment, go to lines, select that particular vendor, Tata Motors, go to settle transactions. Before that, 1 second, just click on OK. Just change this to US dollar here, the payment, otherwise it will convert to Indian rupee again. So I'll go to settle transactions here. I have this invoice, right, that we have posted, Tata invoice 28, which is for 10,500. Here you have to pay total 10,500 to the vendor, right? I mean, it is expense plus tax. However, withholding tax will be calculated now, which will be retained by the company. So in order to calculate withholding tax, you have to mark the invoice first. So select the invoice. Upon selection, I can see here it is saying settlement invoice can 10,500, withholding tax 10% is calculated. So withholding tax is calculating on the base amount of the invoice, not on the sales tax. So sales tax is not included in the calculation of withholding tax. Suppose if I go to withholding tax here, the total invoice amount is 10,500. So invoice amount excluding taxes in invoice currency is 10,000. So that 10,000 will be considered as base amount here. Basis for withholding tax calculation. And upon that 10% will be calculated, which is 1,000. Okay. So that's how. Now, how much you have to pay to the vendor that during the payment? Guess it properly. I need only right answer from you. How much will be this payment journal for? If at all, I will click on OK here. For how much amount this payment journal will be created for? So I'll show it again. So here the total amount of invoice is 10,500. Out of which withholding tax added is 10,000 here. So how much we are paying now and how much we are retaining now?
9,500 will be the payment to the vendor, and withholding amount will be 1,000.
So 9,500 will pay to the vendor now, and 1,000 we will retain to pay later to the tax authority as the withholding tax. Correct?
Yeah.
So everybody's in the same opinion?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Then let's try to click on OK. See, 9,500 is the payment that is being selected. Select offset account as cash account. Okay, then I'll post the payment. Yep, posted. Now I can see the voucher. The voucher I can see cash account is created for 9,500 and accounts payable account is debited for 9,500. So including sales tax you are paying here. Okay, but excluding withholding tax. Excluding withholding tax means you can see that withholding tax entry here in the all related vouchers. If I click on this, it will show up here. So withholding tax payable, which is retained as 1,000. Accounts payable is 1,000. So if when you post this withholding tax entry, there won't be any change in the balance sheet because one liability is decreasing, one liability is increasing. The amount that you have to pay to the vendor, you retained it to pay it to the tax authority later in future. So that's how. So this is how withholding taxes will come into place or will get affected in business. So depending on the country, again, there will be certain additional options available for withholding taxes. So coming to Middle East, the Middle East, it will be the same pattern actually. In India only, we have two types of withholding taxes like TDS and TCS. Tax deducted at source and tax collected at source. So there are options in Indian tax system where you can reduce the withholding tax during the invoice or you can reduce the withholding tax during the payment itself. Both the options are available. So if we select any of the parameter, accordingly it will decrease the withholding tax. So if it is during the invoice, suppose accounts payable account earlier in here was, let's assume there is no tax. Okay, So or we'll go with this account, this entry. Accounts payable account is created for 10,000 and expense is debited for 10,000, right? If the withholding tax is being calculated on the invoice, or if you enable that parameter to calculate the withholding tax during the time of invoice, accounts payable will be created for only 9,000. And here itself withholding tax payable will appear. Withholding tax payable will be recorded during the invoice itself. Will be credited for 1,000. And then expense account will be debited for 10,000. So this will be the entry. If you are applying withholding taxes at the time of invoice itself, we have that parameter in new Indian rules in the dynamics itself in general ledger parameters under sales tax or withholding tax. You normally see that parameter. Do you want to calculate the withholding tax at the time of posting invoice or at the time of making payment? At the time of making payment means the previous example that we have seen. At the time of posting invoice means it will directly credit the withholding tax account to 1,000. So accounts payable is created for only 9,000, right? Later you have to settle accounts payable with 9,000 only. Normally also you are paying 9,000 only. During payment, if you are adding the withholding tax means it's just a time matter. During the invoice, withholding tax account will be created, or during the payment, withholding tax account will be credited. It all depends about that parameter according to the selection of that parameter for the new Indian companies. Remember this point as well. So not many of them will question you on the withholding taxes and tax part because most of them are not really experienced in tax module. So this much of learning for you will be really enough. And they won't stress much on tax module in interviews as well. They'll just ask you what are the basic setups that are required for tax module. So you can say all these setups. These are the necessary setups. Okay. Tax module is one module that varies depending upon the localization to localization or one country to another country. So because of that, they won't ask much questions, but they will ask you these kind of questions on which kind of tax system that you have worked earlier or which companies that you have worked on, what is the tax pattern they are following. If you say Indian company, you will have this GST, TDS and TCS. If you say Middle East, they have VAT and withholding taxes, only two. In Europe also they have VAT and withholding taxes. Coming to Germany, they have some conditional taxes and all. In US, you have different tax system again, federal taxes, then state taxes, province taxes, municipal taxes. 1099 tax is one we have in US. So there are different tax patterns. But for all of them, common is this only, all these setups only. May it be any company, any country's localization, that will be understood or configured in this pattern only mostly. But additionally, you might have some other parameters or features. Like I said, for Indian company, we have some parameter that will guide you for calculation of withholding tax at the time of invoice or at the time of payment. Okay. Clear, guys, for all of you? Any confusion in this understanding? No, right? So practice it well. It's good for you. For
In
your
this, we haven't given any settlement period, right, for withholding.
no, we don't.
Authority as well, but authority we can create as a vendor. But
See, we
for
don't have authority also in this. No, no authority at all. Anything is not there. See, a withholding tax will be calculated on the payables only. I mean, on the
yeah, for
purchases only. So you
yeah,
will have this liability account always credited. Withholding tax payable. You will have this in the
okay,
balance sheet, right? At the end, when you are paying it, you will debit this account and credit the cash account or credit a bank account when you generate a check for withholding tax authority. That's all. Clear? So basic example of the companies paying salaries to the employees. They will pay the salaries retaining the with income tax, right? They don't give the income tax to the employee.
yes,
Company will only keep it and then company will pay it to the tax authority at the end of the month or at
okay.
the end of the quarter like that. So that's how. Then so we don't mostly have lot of reports in taxes, but the most important reports are that we have seen yesterday in the tax module. So you can normally see these reports in the tax module, where in this inquiries and reports, in the inquiries I have posted sales tax payments. Sales tax payment generally shows the payment that you have made. Yesterday we have settled, right? So that settlement entry you will see here normally. So if here every month, if you are settling means every month you will see a new settlement voucher here. So that voucher indicates the settlement amount or the net amount that has to be paid to the authority or that has to be received from the authority. Okay, every month you will see that one new transaction. Within that you can see the posted sales tax, means the total sales tax payables and receivables considered for this voucher will be seen here in the posted sales tax. Other than this, we have important sales tax report, means we have seen it yesterday. Sales tax payment by code, we have one. Sales tax by customer and vendor are important. Then we have this report, sales tax transactions report, where you can see all the sales tax transactions or the transactions that are included with sales taxes. You can see here. So that would be all the important reports. For withholding taxes also we have some inquiries. Posted withholding tax means what is the withholding tax that you have posted until. See, we have posted two withholding taxes, 10%, 10%, right? On two invoices separately. So I can see them 10,000 upon 10,000. I can see 1,000 and 1,000 withholding tax posted. I can also see withholding tax reports here. Withholding tax transactions generally only single report, but in the recent version we have many reports for withholding tax. There is a good enhancement in withholding tax. As I told you, you have all the same kind of setups like you have for sales tax. For withholding tax also you have that. Okay, so then I'll just search for it. Withholding tax new Dynamics 365. So let's see which mode. Withholding tax code, tax name. So this is the old one. This is what global withholding tax. This is the one that we got recently. There is a feature called global withholding tax. If we enable it, we'll get these new options. Global withholding tax overview we have here, and under it we have all these options. Set up global withholding tax. Can just go through all these documents in case if it would be helpful. Global withholding tax here. So I'll just share you one of this document. Once you open this, you will see this again the side. You can go by one documents here. Then we are left over to discuss with sales tax parameters. There are quite less parameters only for sales tax. So normally for sales tax parameters, you don't have any sales tax parameters separately. You have say general ledger parameters, like receivable parameters and payable parameters. Means in these areas we have sales tax parameters often. In general ledger only the main parameters are there. In general ledger we have this sales tax in which I can see these parameters. Now recently, after enabling that global withholding tax, here I see another menu called withholding tax also. For withholding tax we got separate parameters. Okay, only for country specific again. In India I have seen it. Not sure about other countries. I think for the other countries we normally have withholding tax we don't have withholding tax parameters, many of them. But recently they were introduced as well. Here I can see item sales tax group. You can give a default item sales tax group here as all. Means whenever you are creating any invoice, automatically this default sales tax group will appear. Okay, until and unless if you have that specific default sales tax group for a main account or for a particular item, that will be picked up. Otherwise, this one here that you have given in the sales tax parameters, this will be picked up. Okay, for a particular main account or for an item, if you have given a specific item sales tax group, that will be picked up during invoice transaction. But if it is not given, this will be picked up. Okay, normally we have only one item sales tax group right here in this system, so it will be the same one. Otherwise, if they have different sales tax groups, it will pick according to the main account or the item. Okay. Next is calculation date type. here I have invoice date or delivery date or document date. So this is a situation where, so yesterday we have seen within the sales tax code, for specific dates you can give specific tax calculation value, right? See, suppose that tax regime is changing from this month, November, let's assume. So in November it is 5%. Okay. From next month it will be 6%. So how tax has to be calculated on invoices? So according to the invoice date or the posting date or the document date that system is asking. Invoice date means, so whatever will be the date on the invoice, according to that date, it will take either 5% or 6%. So if that invoice date in November month, it will consider the 5% that tax amount. And if the invoice date into the next month, then it will consider the updated tax amount, tax percentage as 6%. Sorry. Or it will consider the delivery date. Delivery date means the date on which you have delivered the goods. Maybe on the purchase order, when the date when you have posted the product receipt, or on the sales order when you have delivered the goods to the customer, when you posted the packing slip. So it will consider that particular date for calculation of tax. So if that delivery date is in November month, it will consider 5%. If it is after November, it will consider 6% or the new tax rate. Coming to the other one, like you have this document date. Document date means the date on which you created the purchase order or the date on which you created the sales order. So the sales order on the date on which you created the sales order is in November, suppose. So it will take November's tax regime only, like 5%. Okay, or it will, or if the sales order was created in after November, so it will take the new rate of 6%, like that. So most commonly it will be invoice date, because whenever you are doing invoice, that day's tax rate only will be normally considered, or that invoice date's rate only will be normally considered. So this is one criteria. Mostly it will be invoice date. Many of them will use invoice date. If until and unless it is a rule in a country to select anything, any other thing, then it will select other. But then they will select other. Then legal entity for intercompany tax posting. In case if you are doing any intercompany transactions which are including tax also, then to which legal entity tax will be posted to. So most often common selection is destination company. The company which is the destination, or source company means the company in your originating company, the company in which you are making the transaction, or you can see here source and destination. Select whether to post intercompany amounts to the legal entity accounts where expense or revenue amounts are being recorded, or where the payable or receivable amounts are being recorded. Select destination to post the sales tax amount for intercompany transaction to the legal entity where the expense or revenue is being distributed. In your organizations uses US sales tax and use tax. This is only optional if you apply US tax rules option. General rules. Okay, select source to post the sales tax amounts for intercompany transaction to the legal entity where the payable to the vendor or the receivable to the customer or a bank account is recorded. Normally we have a concept called as centralized payments. Centralized payments is a concept where you can pay the pending vendor invoices of another legal entity from your legal entity. Okay, if you do that centralized payment setup, suppose if there are some vendor invoices pending on USMF legal entity, I can settle those invoices through my legal entity. I can make payments. In such case, there will be sales taxes, right? So or sales taxes or withholding taxes, anything will be there. So how that has to be calculated, or how and into which company that has to be posted is what it is asking. So either it is will be posted into the company of source, company of source or destination. Mostly it will be destination, or the correct practice or the best practice is destination company only. Whichever company the invoices were posted actually. So in that company only tax also will get posted and calculated, rather than in the paying company. Mostly it will be in the invoiced company, or the company in which the invoice was posted. In that company only you have this taxes calculated and posted. Then tax calculation method, I have total. Normally this depends on the tax codes that you select. In the tax codes you usually have the tax codes to calculate the taxes according to the net amount of the invoice, right? So if you have that kind of selection as net amount of invoice, then the calculation method will be total only. But in case if you have any other selection like tax according to the unit or tax on tax or tax according to the line like that, so then in that case you can select line so that it will differentiate the tax calculation according to the lines of the invoice as well as according to the unit wise. Suppose if you are selecting tax on as unit wise, so it will calculate tax as unit wise. So if you select any other criteria other than the net to calculate tax on the net amount of invoice, so for that you will normally select line. Okay, so it will calculate tax according to the line, round up tax according to the line, and at the end it will pull up the tax anyway on the invoice or on the purchase order. The total tax will be shown according to the line will be calculated first and it will be consolidated to show the total amount of tax. But however the calculation will be according to the line or the rounding off also will be according to the line. So mostly it will be total and it is the most common method. I have seen only one client using it according to the line method earlier, not many of them. Amount include sales tax is one I have. So I told you this parameter will be everywhere. This is entire company level. Again, you will see it in the journal name level. Again, you will see it in the journal header level. All so three places you can see it. So if you disable it, normally tax will be calculated upon the origin amount. It will never be included into the sales tax amount. I mean, you can override it in any level anyway. Up to you. So this parameter applies sales tax taxation rules. We have seen this already. If I enable this parameter, sales tax receivable will disappear in the ledger posting group. So that was specific to US. If we enable this parameter, which means apply US sales tax taxation rules. This means like if you don't enable this parameter, you can see both sales tax payable, sales tax receivable, settlement account, use tax payable and use tax expense, all the accounts in the ledger posting group. If you enable this one, sales tax receivable will disappear and use tax payable will disappear. Okay. So that's only most commonly in US they will use it. That too in few provinces in US or few states in US will use this parameter. That than that not required. Okay, I have conditional taxes. So if there is this option of conditional taxes that you are using, or if any of the company that in the organization is using conditional taxes, you can apply this conditional taxes. So conditional taxes will comes up with some conditions or rules upon how tax has to be paid on partial payments of invoice. Suppose if there is an invoice for 10,000, let's assume, and you are making a payment on the invoice of 2,000 this month. Okay, you have made some schedules like you will pay it every 2 months, 2,000, 2,000, 2,000 like that. So you will pay it for every month, let's assume for 5 months. So how tax has to be calculated? Conditional sales tax will decide it. How tax has to be calculated? Either it will be calculated on the basis of installments itself, or tax has to be paid first in the first month of invoice itself, or first due payment of the invoice itself, or how the tax has to be settled will be have in conditional tax comes up with such kind of rules. Normally in the countries where conditional sales tax is applicable, so you have to follow that conditions specifically. But in the countries where you don't have any conditional sales tax, you can go along with uh, your convenience according to your vendor and you whatever you will agree. You in the same way you can design your payment schedules, and in that payment schedules you have that option, right? Pay the sales tax amount proportionally or at the beginning or at the end, last installment you have that option, so you can follow anything. Then we have this basic parameters. Check sales tax groups. So check sales tax groups, select this notification to receive the sales tax group as errors. Sometimes if the sales tax group is missing in some of the transactions, so it will give you a warning. Such sales tax group is not selected on this particular transaction. Okay, or it will also give warning saying that sales tax group is must and you have to select the sales tax group for such kind of transaction of vendor or customer like that. Or if you say none means it will not validate anything. Normally if you can post a transaction with sales tax or without sales tax, your wish. So normally it will be none only because nobody want it to be strictly as yes, because they have their internal transfers and all for which they don't really require sales tax to be calculated. So it's only for vendor and customer transactions, right? You normally calculate sales taxes. So it's not a compulsory or mandatory to be enabled it as check it compulsorily. tax direction requirement. So normally on tax direction means this one, sales tax payable or sales tax receivable. So this tax direction will automatically get selected on the invoices. So if you are making a vendor invoice means, so it will automatically select sales tax receivable. If you are making any customer invoice means, it will automatically select sales tax payable. Directions automatically system will select. There is no need for you to manually select the sales tax direction, because system knows if it is a vendor transaction, this is how it is, and if it is a customer transaction, it will be another direction. So here this parameter will give that select option to require the sales tax direction to be defined on a ledger account before sales tax related transactions can be posted to that account. Which means, suppose if there is a insurance expense account, so you have given that insurance expense account in a invoice as a debit account. So vendor is created an invoice and this insurance expense account is debited. In that case, that insurance expense account should definitely have a sales tax direction. Normally we have that right in the account selection. In the main account we have that option of selecting either purchase or sales, something like that direction. So that direction is compulsory for such accounts if at all you are selecting for invoices, or also for the revenue accounts if you are selecting them in the free text invoice. So if we enable this parameter, that will be a compulsory thing that has to be enabled for each main account or each expense account or revenue account which you use in the sales tax transactions or which include sales taxes while doing invoices. So that is also not required. I'm just disabling it. Not required actually. Validate tax code. Select this option to validate sales tax code that is assigned to the ledger account when you post a document. Normally when you are posting any purchase order related invoice or sales order related invoice or any vendor invoice or sales invoices, upon a main account that you are using, for that main account if you have used any sales tax code as a default sales tax code, we have that option to give. Normally many of them won't give that sales tax code as default code, but if they give it for the main account, system will validate if I am accurately using the same code, same sales tax code, or if I change anything. If I change it again, it will say that you are not using the same code, you have to use the same code. So normally they don't use this one because sales tax varies from situation to situation. So one particular code will not be linked to a main account. So that's all. If you have linked such codes, it will validate if the same code is being used or not. Next, I have auto search sales tax. I'm not sure about this parameter. I never use this one as well. Auto sales tax search. I think it automatically search for the sales tax code according to the, sales tax according to the transaction. I guess so, but I'm not really sure about this one. Other than this, we have this one. This is very rare that cash discounts will be calculated on sales taxes. Okay, normally, if I go with an example, see, generally, if I go with a normal example, accounts payable account. So let's take this accounts payable account is created for 1000 and uh, expense account is for 900 debited. Sales tax receivable is debited for 100. Okay, this is also debit. This is also debit. So this will be the invoice entry. Normally when I post an invoice with sales tax, if somebody is giving, if vendor is giving me cash discount means he will normally give cash discount on this amount 900. Okay, you don't give cash discount on taxes. For tax 100 I have to pay it straight away, but for on 900 he will give some amount of uh, discount like 10% or 15% like that. Mostly sales tax will not be, cash discount will not be calculated on sales tax payments. Tax you have to pay to the vendor directly because vendor have to submit the same tax amount to the authority. If vendor gives cash discount, he have to bear that amount. On sales tax, if the vendor give cash discount, like if I'm paying only 80 after deducting cash discount, so that $20 again vendor have to pay it from his pocket, pay to the authority from his pocket. So he will collect. It means like he is collecting 100 only from us. He have to pay to the authority as $100. If we give discount to us in the tax also, then he have to bear that discount amount. Okay, it's lost to him. So mostly they won't give any they won't encourage any cash discounts on sales tax amount. Sales tax should be paid normally, but upon the base amount of the invoice, cash discounts are calculated. But these parameters here will override that kind of option. If at all sales tax has to be calculated on customer cash discounts and vendor cash discount, you have to ensure that these parameters are enabled. Okay, here I can see reverse sales tax on cash discount. I have one option, which means if at all a cash discount is calculated on the invoice with the sales tax, suppose it will reverse the sales tax calculated. Normally here you can see accounts payable is created for 10,000, expense account is debited for 900, sales tax receivable is debited for 100. If you make this payment, okay, normally I am taking 10%. So okay, 10% discount. 10% discount means I'll get 100. 100 means on expense account I'll get 90. On sales tax I'll get 10. Suppose when cash discount is calculated on taxes also. So now if I'm making vendor payment, so accounts payable will be debited for 900 only because I'm paying only 900. Next, cash account will be credited for 900 only because I am sorry, accounts payable will be debited for total 1000. So in the payment actually it doesn't debit, it will be 900 only. Cash discount, cash account will be created for 900. Later I'll see another entry like this one, cash discount or vendor cash discount additional entry will be credited for 100. Again, accounts payable will be debited for 100. This is the entry that I'll get, right, when normally when we have any tax amount. So normally what it will do is here in this situation, in this situation usually it will debit the account, but I have the sales tax account also reversed actually. Sales tax receivable, right? So earlier it used to be 100. So sales tax receivable will be reversed for, will be credited for 10 again. And then this would be right, and this is the thing, sales tax receivable will be credited for 10, and there should be any offset account for this again, right? So I'm assuming some other account, accounts payable account, I think again. So it should be a portion somewhere. So normally in this reverse sales tax on cash discount, if at all you apply cash discount on sales tax, normally that sales tax account will get reversed. That's the thing. So that's what it says also. Even cash discount is applied to the invoice. This, see, if you, this selection determines, select the option if sales tax should be reversed when cash discount is granted. So this will normally reverse the sales tax amount upon the calculation of cash discount on the sales tax normally. Then deduct cash discount before sales tax calculation. So if at all there is a mandatory cash discount code applied, it will deduct the sales cash discount before the sales tax calculation itself, which means suppose if the invoice is for 1000, it will reduce the cash discount of 10%. On 900 only tax will be calculated. That would be little funny. Not most of them will opt for that one as well. Before only it will deduct the cash discount, and on the remaining base amount of the invoice it will calculate the sales tax, which is not really a good practice. But there are situations where you may follow it, or the clients who might opt for it, so they have this parameter. Then on customer cash discounts, cash discount is calculated on amount including sales tax. See, select this option if the cash discount for vendors should be, so it should be normally for cash discount on vendor should be calculated based on the total invoice amount, which includes sales tax. Cash discount is applied on invoice option. This field is not applicable. So this one, If you enable this one, then the tax will be calculated on sales tax also. Then you can give mandatory item tax groups. Select this option to require the item tax groups to be specified on free text invoices. So this is for customers actually. So cash discount has to be calculated on customer invoices upon where the does it has to be calculated on the sales tax amount also? That's what it is asking. Normally it won't get calculated. If you want to get it calculated or cash discounts to be accounted on that sales tax amounts also, then you can select this parameter. So this is for vendors. Upon the vendor invoices, if sales tax has to be calculated based on the total invoice amount, which includes sales tax, then you can enable this parameter. If not, no need. So sales tax and overpayments or underpayments. In case if you are making any overpayments or if customer is making any overpayments to you, then sales tax amount has to be calculated more or to be added more. You can select here. Suppose the invoice amount is 1000. Okay, and the sales tax amount is 100. Total amount to be paid to the vendor is 1100. Suppose if you are paying 1200, so they will upon which some other amount will be added as a cash discount, sorry, sales tax amount. So you are paying 1200, right? So normally when you pay 1100, only 100 will be the tax. If you are paying 1200 means upon the extra 100 that you are paying, another $10 will be taken as tax amount or will be calculated as tax amount since you have paid more. Okay, in the same way from customers, if you receive more or less, so it will only apportion the sales tax percentage amount according to the amount that you have received and paid, or received more or received less accordingly. So this is also not a regular practice, so not usual practice too. Normally taxes will be considered according to the payment that they have made by the vendor. Suppose if customer is paying 10,000 on an invoice where you have to pay 15,000, in that 10,000 firstly you will deduct the tax itself, so you will show the remaining amount. So tax amount you will deduct it firstly in the installment that you have received. In the remaining 5,000 that you have to receive, that will be the normal amount on the invoice only. Then sales tax amount per invoice line. Select this option to update the total calculated sales tax amount on the invoice journal. When this option is cleared, no sales tax amount is updated. So it is saying select this option to update the total calculated sales tax amount on the invoice journal. So when you select this, it shows the total calculated sales tax on the invoice journal normally. Sales tax amount per invoice line. So according to each line, it will show the total tax amount when you print it, I think so. Then include corrections is one we have. So select this option to include sales tax corrections in the sales tax payment periodic job and report. Select a sales tax report that includes corrections from previous periods is not marked as a correction report. If you select this option, sales tax payment version field is not available in the sales tax payment page.